Imagine watching your little boy fighting for his life, while the people who should protect him spend nearly $500,000 throwing a wedding party. Hi, I'm Maya Bennett, and this is the story of how my parents poured $430,000 into my sister's wedding, but refused to save my son's life when it cost just $70,000. Wherever you're watching from, whether it's sunrise in Miami, dusk in Seattle, or somewhere else, drop your city and time in the comments below. I want to hear from you. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. This story isn't just about money. It's about betrayal, family secrets, and a shocking CEO twist that you won't see coming. Stay close, because what happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about family. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when everything shattered. I was standing in our kitchen in Maplewood, Ohio, pouring coffee into my favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that Pilar always told me to throw out. The autumn sun filtered through the window, casting warm light across the countertop. Everything felt normal, routine, safe. Then my phone rang. Pilar's name flashed on the screen, but the tone in her voice when I answered wasn't hers. It was strained, cracked, desperate. Nolan. Something's wrong with August. My heart dropped. August, our 7-year-old son, the kid who loved building Lego cities on the living room floor and begging for extra bedtime stories, had been complaining about headaches for weeks. We'd chalked it up to screen time, maybe stress from school. But Pilar's voice told me this wasn't just another headache. What do you mean, something's wrong? I asked, gripping the counter. He collapsed, Nolan. He just fell. I'm in the car. We're going to Lakeview Medical right now. The mug slipped from my hand and shattered against the tile floor. Coffee pooled around my feet, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I'm on my way, I managed to say before the line went dead. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. Everything blurred, red lights, honking horns, the sound of my own breathing. When I finally pulled into the parking lot at Lakeview Medical, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. Inside, the emergency room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A nurse at the desk pointed me toward the pediatric wing without saying a word. I think she could see it on my face. The panic. The helplessness. Pilar was in the hallway, pacing back and forth, her arms wrapped around herself. When she saw me, she broke. I caught her before her knees gave out. They're running tests, she whispered into my chest. They don't know what's wrong yet. Where is he? I asked. She nodded toward a room at the end of the hall. Through the narrow window, I could see August lying on a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors. His eyes were closed. He looked so small, so fragile. A doctor emerged from the room, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a badge that read, Dr. Patel. She gestured for us to follow her into a small consultation room. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, she began, her tone measured but serious. August is stable for now, but we need to talk about what we've found. Pilar grabbed my hand. I squeezed back, hard. Dr. Patel pulled up a scan on her tablet. Images of August's spine, illuminated in shades of gray and white. She pointed to a shadowy region near the base of his neck. This is a rare spinal condition. It's progressive, which means it will get worse without intervention. August needs surgery, soon. The procedure is delicate, and there are only a handful of specialists in the country who can perform it safely. What are we talking about? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How soon? Within the next 6 weeks, maybe less. Pilar's grip tightened. And the cost? Dr. Patel hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. The surgery, combined with pre-op consultations, imaging, and post-op care, will run approximately $70,000. Unfortunately, most insurance companies classify this as experimental, so coverage is limited. $70,000. I felt the air leave the room. Pilar's face went pale. We weren't wealthy people. I worked as a mid-level manager at a logistics company. Pilar was a part-time graphic designer. We had a mortgage, car payments, credit card debt. We lived paycheck to paycheck like so many families do. Is there any other option? Pilar asked, her voice breaking. Dr. Patel's expression softened, but she shook her head. I wish there were. But without the surgery, August's condition will deteriorate. He could lose mobility. There's also a risk of permanent neurological damage. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. We sat with August for hours after that, watching him sleep, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor. Pilar held his hand. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing through every possible solution. We could take out a loan, sell the house, launch a fundraiser, but none of those options felt fast enough, reliable enough. And then, a thought crept into my mind, one I didn't want to entertain but couldn't ignore. My parents, Gregory and Delia Price. They weren't millionaires, but they were comfortable, more than comfortable. My father had been a regional manager for a manufacturing company before he retired, and my mother had inherited a decent sum from her side of the family. They'd always been careful with money, frugal even. But lately, that had changed. My sister Sienna had gotten engaged 6 months earlier to a man named Casey Sullivan, a corporate lawyer from a well-connected family. The wedding was set for November, and my parents had thrown themselves into planning it with an intensity I'd never seen before. Every conversation became about venues, floral arrangements, guest lists. Every dinner turned into a budget review. I'd heard the numbers whispered at family gatherings. $430,000. Maybe more. At the time, I'd brushed it off. It was their money. Sienna was their golden child. If they wanted to spend it on her big day, that was their choice. But now, sitting in that hospital room, watching my son fight for his life, those numbers burned in my mind. $430,000 for a wedding. $70,000 to save August. I looked at Pilar. She met my gaze, and I knew she was thinking the same thing. We have to ask them, I said quietly. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. If you've ever had to choose between pride and survival, drop a comment below. Have you had to ask family for help when you didn't want to? Let me know. I want to hear your story. Sienna had always been the golden child. Growing up, I'd watched my parents light up whenever she entered a room. She had this effortless charm, bright smile, quick wit, the kind of personality that made strangers feel like old friends. Teachers loved her, neighbors adored her, and our parents? They worshipped her. I didn't resent it, not really. That's just how things were. Sienna was the star, and I was background noise. But when she got engaged to Casey Sullivan last spring, something shifted. My parents didn't just celebrate. They transformed into wedding planning machines, pouring every ounce of their energy, attention, and money into making Sienna's big day unforgettable. It started innocently enough. A small ceremony at the local country club, they said. Simple, elegant, affordable. Then Sienna visited the Grand Oak Ballroom in downtown Cleveland, a venue dripping with old-world luxury. Crystal chandeliers, mahogany paneling, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. The moment she stepped inside, she turned to our mother with tears in her eyes and whispered, "This is it, Mom. This is where I want to marry Casey." And just like that, the budget exploded. My father, Gregory, who'd spent decades preaching frugality and saving for retirement, suddenly became a man possessed. He hired a celebrity wedding planner from Los Angeles, a woman named Isabel Monroe, whose Instagram was full of A-list weddings and six-figure floral installations. My mother, Delia, threw herself into dress shopping with the intensity of someone training for the Olympics. They flew to New York City for exclusive bridal boutiques, stayed at the plaza, and returned with a custom gown that cost more than my first car. I tried to be happy for Sienna. I really did. But as the weeks passed and August's headaches grew worse, I couldn't ignore the growing knot in my stomach every time my parents gushed about centerpieces, live jazz bands, and imported champagne. One Sunday afternoon in early October, Pilar and I attended a family dinner at my parents' house in Shaker Heights. The dining room table was covered in wedding magazines, fabric swatches, and seating charts. Sienna sat at the center, glowing, while Delia fluttered around her like a hummingbird. "We've narrowed it down to 2 caterers," Delia announced, holding up glossy brochures. "One specializes in farm-to-table cuisine, the other does French fusion. Both are divine." Gregory nodded approvingly. "The French fusion place quoted us at $285 per plate, but the presentation is exquisite, worth every penny." I nearly choked on my water. $285 per plate, for 150 guests. I did the math in my head. Over $42,000 just for food. Pilar squeezed my hand under the table, her expression tight. August had stayed home that night, too tired to come along. His headaches had been getting worse, and we'd scheduled the appointment at Lakeview Medical for later that week. "Sienna, this is going to be the wedding of the year," Delia said, beaming. "Everyone's going to remember this day forever." Sienna smiled, radiant. "I just want it to be perfect, Mom. Casey's family is flying in from Boston, and they have such high standards. I want to make you proud." Gregory reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You already do, sweetheart. You always have." I looked away, staring at my plate. Later that evening, as Pilar and I loaded dishes into the kitchen, I overheard my parents talking in the hallway. "Do you think we're overdoing it?" Delia asked, her voice low. Gregory laughed softly. "It's Sienna's wedding, Delia. We only get one chance to do this right. Besides, we've worked hard our whole lives. Why shouldn't we spend it on something meaningful?" "I suppose you're right," Delia murmured. "I just don't want people to think we're being extravagant. Let them think what they want. This is about family, about legacy." I clenched my jaw, setting a dish down harder than I meant to. Pilar touched my shoulder. "Let's go home," she whispered. On the drive back to Maplewood, neither of us spoke for a long time. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, Pilar broke it. "They spent $42,000 on food, Nolan. Just food." I nodded, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "And we can't even afford August's surgery." "I know," I said quietly. "Are you going to ask them?" I didn't answer right away. The thought of asking my parents for money felt humiliating. But what choice did we have? "I'll talk to them after the appointment," I said finally. "Once we have all the details from the doctors. Once it's real." Pilar nodded, staring out the window at the darkened streets. "It's already real, Nolan." She was right. 3 days later, August collapsed in our kitchen, and the nightmare truly began. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like someone else always came first? The fluorescent lights in the consultation room at Lakeview Medical felt unbearably bright. Pilar sat beside me, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. Across from us, Dr. Patel adjusted her glasses and pulled up another scan on her tablet. "I want to be completely transparent with you both," she began, her tone measured but compassionate. "August's condition is called cervical spinal arteriovenous malformation, a rare vascular abnormality affecting the blood vessels in his spinal cord." The words sounded foreign, clinical, terrifying. "What does that mean?" Pilar asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Patel leaned forward slightly. "In simple terms, there's an abnormal tangle of blood vessels near August's cervical spine, his neck region. This tangle is putting pressure on his spinal cord and restricting blood flow. That's what's causing the headaches, the dizziness, and the fainting episodes." I swallowed hard. "And if we don't do anything?" Dr. Patel's expression darkened. "Without intervention, the condition will worsen. August could experience permanent neurological damage, loss of motor function in his arms and legs, chronic pain, potentially paralysis. In severe cases, it can be life-threatening. Pilar's breath hitched. I reached for her hand, squeezing it as tightly as I could. "What are his options?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Surgery," Dr. Patel said plainly. "August needs endovascular embolization, a specialized procedure where a neurosurgeon accesses the malformation through a catheter and seals off the abnormal blood vessels. It's delicate, complex, and requires a team with extensive experience in pediatric vascular neurosurgery." "Can you do it here?" Pilar asked hopefully. Dr. Patel shook her head gently. "Unfortunately, no. This is a highly specialized procedure. There are only a handful of medical centers in the country equipped to handle cases like August's. The best option would be the Cleveland Clinic or Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Both have world-class pediatric neurosurgery teams." I exhaled slowly, trying to process everything. "And the timeline?" "Ideally, within the next 4 to 6 weeks, Dr. Patel said. "The longer we wait, the greater the risk of irreversible damage. 6 weeks. A month and a half." It felt like both an eternity and no time at all. "And the cost?" I asked, dreading the answer. Dr. Patel hesitated, glancing down at her notes. "The surgery itself, combined with preoperative imaging, hospital stay, anesthesia, and postoperative care, will likely run between $65,000 and $75,000. That's assuming no complications." $70,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. "What about insurance?" Pilar asked, her voice cracking. "We have coverage through Nolan's employer." Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. "I've already contacted your insurance provider. Unfortunately, they're classifying this procedure as non-essential because August isn't currently paralyzed or in immediate life-threatening distress. They're denying coverage." "Non-essential?" I repeated, my voice rising. "He could lose the ability to walk. He could die." "I know," Dr. Patel said softly, "and I've filed an appeal on your behalf. But these cases can take weeks, sometimes months, to resolve. And August doesn't have that kind of time." Pilar buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close, but I felt just as helpless. We sat with August in his hospital room for hours after that. He was awake now, propped up against pillows, looking pale and fragile but managing a weak smile when he saw us. "Hey, buddy," I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," he murmured. "My head still hurts a little." Pilar brushed his hair back from his forehead, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "The doctors are going to make you feel better, sweetheart. I promise." August looked at me with those big, trusting eyes. "Am I going to be okay, Dad?" I forced a smile, even though my heart was breaking. "You're going to be just fine, August. We're going to take care of everything." He nodded, satisfied, and closed his eyes again. That night, back at home in Maplewood, Pilar and I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by medical bills, insurance statements, and bank account printouts. The numbers didn't add up. They never would. "We have $8,000 in savings," Pilar said, her voice hollow. "We could take out a loan, maybe get $20,000 if we're lucky, but that still leaves us $40,000 short." I rubbed my face with both hands, exhaustion settling into my bones. "We could sell the house." "And live where, Nolan?" Pilar snapped, then immediately softened. "I'm sorry, I don't know what to do." Neither did I. Then, slowly, reluctantly, the thought I'd been avoiding crept back into my mind. My parents, Gregory and Delia Price, the people currently spending nearly $500,000 on my sister's wedding. "I'm going to ask them," I said quietly. Pilar looked up, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. "Do you think they'll help?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe that when it came down to it, family would choose family, that a grandson's life would matter more than floral centerpieces and champagne towers, but deep down, I wasn't sure. "I have to try," I said. Pilar nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Then we try." The days following our conversation with my parents felt surreal. While Pilar and I scraped together every penny we could find, my phone lit up constantly with family group chat updates about Sienna's wedding. Each notification felt like a knife twisting deeper. Family group chat, October 14th, 9:47. AM Sienna. Just finalized the floral arrangements with Isabel. Wait until you see the ceremony arch. It's going to be stunning. Delia. I can't wait, sweetheart. The pictures are going to be absolutely gorgeous. Gregory. Money well spent. This is going to be a day no one forgets. I stared at my phone screen, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Money well spent. That night, while August slept fitfully in his room, hooked up to a portable monitor we'd rented from the hospital, I did something I'd been avoiding. I started adding up the wedding expenses based on conversations I'd overheard and details shared in the group chat. The numbers made me sick. The Grand Oak Ballroom venue rental, $45,000 celebrity wedding planner, Isabel Monroe, $35,000 custom bridal gown from Manhattan, $18,000 floral installations, ceremony arch, centerpieces, bouquets, $32,000 catering for 150 guests at $285 per plate, $42,650 live jazz band, flown in from New Orleans, $15,000 photography and videography package, $22,000 custom wedding cake, imported baker from New York, $8,500 champagne and wine selection, $12,000 invitations and stationery, custom letterpress, $6,200 lighting design and decor, $19,000 transportation, vintage Rolls-Royce guest shuttles, $8,500 rehearsal dinner at the Ritz-Carlton, $14,000 bridal suite and accommodations, $7,800 miscellaneous, favors, programs, guest gifts, $9,250 total, $295,000, and that was just what I could confirm. My father had mentioned a few other surprises he and my mother were planning. Knowing them, the final tally was easily pushing past $430,000. $430,000 for one day. One party. Meanwhile, my son needed $70,000 to walk, to live a normal life, to have a future, and we couldn't come up with it. The contrasts became unbearable. While Pilar sat in hospital waiting rooms filling out financial assistance forms, Sienna posted Instagram stories of champagne tastings at upscale restaurants. While I called our bank to discuss a second mortgage on our already stretched finances, my mother texted the family group photos of the custom monogrammed napkins that had just arrived. While August asked me why his legs felt tingly and weak, Gregory sent an excited message about the surprise fireworks display he'd secretly arranged for the reception. Every single update felt like a slap in the face. One afternoon, I was at work trying to focus when my phone buzzed. Another group chat message. Delia. Just picked up Sienna's shoes. They're Manolo Blahniks, $200, but worth every penny. She's going to look like a princess. I stared at the message. $1,200. For shoes. Shoes she'd wear for a few hours. That money could have covered August's preoperative imaging, or a week of his post-surgery physical therapy, or medications. But instead, it was going toward designer footwear. I typed out a response 3 times and deleted it each time. What could I even say? Hey, maybe skip the expensive shoes and help save your grandson's life instead? I locked my phone and walked outside, needing air. That weekend, Sienna hosted a bridal brunch at an exclusive country club in Westlake. Pilar and I weren't planning to go. We were exhausted, emotionally drained, and frankly couldn't stomach another wedding celebration. But Delia called, insisting. It would mean so much to Sienna if you were there, she said, her voice sweet but firm. Family should be together during these special times. Pilar looked at me, exhausted. Do we have to? I wanted to say no, but part of me, some small, foolish part, hoped that maybe, just maybe, being there in person would remind them what really mattered. So we went. The country club was pristine. White tablecloths, crystal champagne flutes, fresh roses on every table. Guests wore designer dresses and pearls. A harpist played softly in the corner. Sienna floated through the room in a flowing pastel dress, radiant and glowing, accepting hugs and congratulations. Casey stood beside her, polished and charming, shaking hands with his future in-laws' friends. Everyone seemed so happy, so carefree. I felt like I was watching from behind glass. Delia spotted us and rushed over, beaming. "Nolan, Pilar, I'm so glad you came. Isn't this just lovely?" "It's beautiful," Pilar said quietly. "Where's August?" Delia asked, glancing around. "With my sister," I said. "He's not feeling well enough to be out." Delia's smile faltered for just a moment before bouncing back. "Well, give him our love. Oh, you have to try the mimosas. They're divine." She fluttered away, leaving us standing alone in the middle of the celebration. Gregory approached next, champagne in hand, grinning. "Nolan, good to see you. What do you think of all this? Pretty impressive, right?" "It's something," I muttered. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Your sister deserves the best. This is her moment. Her moment." I looked around the room, at the ice sculptures, the towering floral centerpieces, the waiters circling with trays of gourmet hors d'oeuvres. And all I could think about was August, lying in a hospital bed, scared and in pain. Pilar tugged my sleeve gently. "I need to leave, please." We slipped out quietly, unnoticed. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. When we finally pulled into our driveway, Pilar turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "They don't care, Nolan. They really don't care." I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend them, but I couldn't, because deep down I knew she was right. If you've ever felt like you didn't matter to your own family, comment below. Let's talk about it, because this pain is real. This chapter drives home the devastating contrast and builds righteous anger in the audience, while deepening sympathy for the protagonists. October slipped into its third week, and the contrasts became unbearable. While Pilar spent her night sleeping in a stiff hospital chair beside August's bed, Sienna posted Instagram photos of champagne toasts at exclusive venues with her bridesmaids. While I stayed awake until 3 a.m. researching experimental treatments and calling insurance companies, my parents sent group chat updates about their trip to New York to pick up custom wedding favors. Handmade Italian chocolates wrapped in silk ribbon. The world split into two realities, and I was trapped watching both unfold simultaneously. Hospital reality. August's condition was deteriorating faster than the doctors had anticipated. His legs tingled constantly now. Some mornings he couldn't feel his toes. Dr. Patel increased the frequency of his monitoring appointments, her expression growing graver each time. "We're running out of time," she told us quietly one afternoon. "His nervous system is showing signs of progressive damage. We need to move forward with surgery within the next 3 weeks, or we risk permanent consequences." 3 weeks. Pilar broke down in the hospital parking lot that day, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I held her, feeling completely powerless, watching other families come and go, some leaving with smiling children, others with the same haunted expressions we wore. We'd managed to raise $18,000 through our GoFundMe campaign. Generous strangers, co-workers, and a few distant relatives had donated what they could. But we were still $52,000 short, and the donations had slowed to a trickle. Every night, Pilar sat beside August's bed, holding his hand, reading him stories, trying to keep his spirits up while her own heart shattered. "Mom, when can I go home?" August asked one night, his voice small and scared. "Soon, baby," Pilar whispered, stroking his hair. "Very soon." But we both knew it wasn't true. Wedding reality. Meanwhile, the Price family wedding machine rolled forward at full speed, October 18th, family group. Chat Sienna, final dress fitting today. It's absolutely perfect, I cried when I put it on. Delia, you looked like a dream, sweetheart. I can't wait for everyone to see you walk down that aisle. Gregory, my little girl, all grown up, worth every penny. October 20th, family group. Chat, Delia, just confirmed the final headcount with the caterer, 148 guests. The menu is exquisite. Duck confit appetizers, filet mignon entrees, and that gorgeous 6-tier cake. Sienna, I can't believe it's only 2 weeks away. This is really happening. October 22nd, family group, chat. Gregory, picked up the vintage Rolls-Royce today for a test drive. Sienna, you're going to arrive in style, princess. Each notification felt like a punch to the gut. I stopped opening the group chat. Pilar blocked the notifications entirely, but the updates kept coming, relentless and oblivious. One evening, while I sat in the hospital cafeteria choking down vending machine coffee, my phone rang. It was Delia. Nolan, sweetheart, we haven't heard from you in a few days. Is everything all right? I nearly laughed. Everything all right? August's getting worse, Mom, I said flatly. The doctors say we have 3 weeks, maybe less before the damage becomes permanent. Silence on the other end. Oh, Nolan, she said softly. I'm so sorry. Have you been able to raise more funds? Some. Not enough. Another pause. Well, keep trying, honey. I'm sure something will work out. Listen, I actually called because we need to finalize the seating chart for the reception. Are you and Pilar still planning to attend? My blood turned to ice. Are we... Mom, are you serious right now? I know things are difficult, but this is your sister's wedding. It's important to her that you're there. Families should be together. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I hung up. That night, back in August's room, Pilar showed me her phone. Someone had tagged her in one of Sienna's Instagram posts. A photo of the bridal party in matching silk robes, sipping mimosas, captioned, 3 weeks until the best day of my life. Pilar stared at the screen, her face expressionless. She has no idea, does she? Pilar whispered. None of them do. They don't see us. They don't see him. She looked at August, asleep under thin hospital blankets, monitors beeping softly. We're invisible to them, she said. And in that moment, I realized she was absolutely right. 11 days before the wedding, 16 days before August's surgery window closed forever. I couldn't take it anymore. The polite rejections, the empty promises, the endless wedding updates while my son deteriorated in a hospital bed. Something inside me snapped. I showed up at my parents' house unannounced that evening. No phone call, no warning. I just drove there, fury coursing through my veins like poison. Gregory answered the door, surprise flickering across his face. Nolan? We weren't expecting... We need to talk, I said, pushing past him into the house. Now. Delia emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Nolan, sweetheart, is everything. No, Mom. Everything is not okay. My voice was louder than I intended, sharper. August has 11 days left. 11. After that, the damage becomes permanent. He could lose the ability to walk. He could be paralyzed for life. Gregory's jaw tightened. Nolan, we understand the situation is difficult. Difficult? I laughed bitterly. Difficult is figuring out how to pay for college. Difficult is dealing with a broken-down car. This is my son's life. Delia's eyes filled with tears. We want to help, Nolan. We do. But the timing... The timing? I interrupted, my voice breaking. You've spent $430,000 on Sienna's wedding. $430,000. And you can't spare $70,000 to save your grandson? The number hung in the air like an accusation. Gregory's face reddened. That money was committed months ago. We can't just... Yes, you can, I shouted. Cancel the fireworks. Downgrade the cake. Skip the vintage Rolls-Royce. There are 100 ways to cut costs, but you won't because Sienna's perfect day matters more than August's life. That's not fair, Delia said, her voice trembling. Fair? I stared at her, incredulous. You want to talk about fair? August is 7 years old. He didn't ask for this. And you're choosing flower arrangements over him. Gregory stepped forward, his expression hardening. We are not choosing anything over anyone. This wedding has been planned for months. Contracts have been signed. Deposits are non-refundable. I don't care about deposits. My hands were shaking. Your grandson is dying, and you're worried about losing money on centerpieces. Don't you dare guilt us, Gregory snapped, his voice rising to match mine. We've worked hard for what we have. We've made sacrifices. We have the right to spend our money however we choose. Not when your choices cost a child his future. The silence that followed was deafening. Delia sank onto the couch, her face pale. Gregory turned away, staring out the window, his shoulders tense. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and strained. You don't understand, Nolan. This isn't just about the wedding. I froze. What does that mean? He didn't answer immediately. When he turned back, there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Something dark, haunted. This family has an image to maintain, he said carefully. Expectations, responsibilities. Image? I repeated, disbelief flooding through me. You're letting your grandson suffer to protect your image? It's more complicated than that, Delia whispered. Then explain it to me, I shouted, my voice cracking. Help me understand how you can look at August, your own flesh and blood, and say no. Gregory's jaw worked. For a moment, I thought he might actually tell me the truth, whatever it was. But then his expression closed off, his walls going back up. We've said what we can say, he said flatly. After the wedding, we'll revisit the conversation. But right now, we have commitments. I stared at him, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. Commitments, I repeated numbly. Delia reached for my hand. Nolan, please, try to understand. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Her face crumpled. You know what I understand? I said, my voice cold. I understand that when it mattered most, when your grandson needed you, you chose a party. I understand that whatever this family image is, it's worth more to you than a 7-year-old boy's life. I turned toward the door, my vision blurring with tears. Nolan, wait, Delia called after me. I didn't stop. Don't bother coming to the hospital, I said without turning around. You're not welcome there anymore. I sat in my car in their driveway for 20 minutes, shaking, sobbing, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Gregory's words echoed in my mind. This family has an image to maintain. What did that mean? What secret were they protecting? What was so important that it was worth sacrificing August? I didn't have answers. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was done asking. If my parents wouldn't save my son, I'd find another way. Even if it meant burning every bridge in this family to the ground. After the confrontation with my parents, the silence was deafening. No phone calls, no text messages, no apologies. Just an eerie, suffocating void where my family used to be. Pilar and I were truly on our own now. The GoFundMe campaign had stalled at $18,047. For days, no new donations came in. I refreshed the page obsessively, hoping for a miracle, but the number stayed frozen. We'd sent emails to every medical charity we could find. Most never responded. The few that did said August's case didn't meet their criteria or that their funds were already allocated for the year. I called news stations, hoping someone would tell our story. One local reporter showed mild interest but said they'd get back to me. They never did. We were invisible, drowning, and nobody seemed to notice. Every morning, I woke up with a crushing weight on my chest. The The knowledge that time was running out and I couldn't save my son. Pilar stopped sleeping entirely. She'd stay awake all night, researching experimental treatments, emailing surgeons across the country, filling out loan applications that kept getting denied. Our kitchen table became a war room covered in medical bills, rejected insurance appeals, and bank statements showing accounts running dangerously close to zero. "We're out of options," Pilar whispered one night, staring blankly at the stack of papers. "I don't know what else to do." I didn't either, and that terrified me more than anything. August's condition continued to worsen. The tingling in his legs had spread. Some days he couldn't stand without help. Dr. Patel's expression grew graver with each appointment. "We're down to 8 days," she told us privately after one examination. "After that, I can't guarantee the surgery will be effective. The damage may already be too extensive." 8 days. That night, August asked me a question that shattered what was left of my heart. "Dad, why don't Grandma and Grandpa visit anymore?" I was tucking him into his hospital bed, adjusting his blankets, trying to keep my hands steady. "They're busy with Aunt Sienna's wedding, buddy," I said, forcing a smile. August frowned, his small face thoughtful. "Is the wedding more important than me?" I froze. How do you answer that question? How do you tell a 7-year-old that yes, apparently it is? "No, August," I said, my voice thick. "You are the most important thing in the world. Don't ever forget that." He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Kids always know when you're not telling them the whole truth. The wedding invitations had gone out weeks ago. Ours arrived in the mail on October 28th. Thick, cream-colored cardstock with elegant gold lettering. "Mr. and Mrs. Gregory Price request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Sienna Marie Price, to Mr. Casey Michael Sullivan." I stared at it for a long time, feeling nothing but emptiness. Pilar found me in the kitchen holding the invitation. Without a word, she took it from my hands, walked to the trash can, and threw it away. We didn't discuss it. There was nothing left to say. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, while I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria trying to choke down a stale sandwich, my phone buzzed with a notification. New donation to help August get the surgery he needs. 500. I blinked, confused. We hadn't received a donation in days. Then another notification came through. New donation, 200, then another. New donation, 1,000. My hands started shaking. I opened the GoFundMe page and watched in disbelief as donations poured in. $50, $100, $250, $500 from people I'd never heard of. Within an hour, we'd raised another $8,000. I called Pilar, barely able to speak. "Check the GoFundMe. Something's happening." By the end of the night, we'd raised $15,000 more. Strangers from across the country were donating, leaving messages of support and encouragement, praying for August. "No child should have to suffer like this. Stay strong. Family isn't always blood. We've got you." I sat in that hospital cafeteria, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed by the kindness of people who owed us nothing. We later found out what had happened. Someone, we never learned who, had shared August's story on social media. It had been picked up by a parenting blog, then a Reddit thread, then a local news Facebook page. Within 48 hours, August's GoFundMe had gone semi-viral in our community. People we'd never met were rallying around us. Co-workers organized bake sales. Our neighbor set up a car wash fundraiser. A local church took up a special collection. The community that my own family had abandoned us for became our family. By October 30th, 6 days before the wedding, 6 days before August's deadline, we'd raised $52,000. We were still $18,000 short, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. That night, Pilar and I sat beside August's hospital bed, holding hands, watching him sleep peacefully for the first time in days. "We're going to make it," Pilar whispered. "We're actually going to make it." I squeezed her hand, tears in my eyes. "Yeah, we are. Not because of my parents, not because of family obligation or blood ties, but because when it mattered most, strangers became our family, and that was enough." November 1st, 5 days before the wedding, 5 days before August's surgical window closed forever. Despite the incredible outpouring of community support, we were still $18,000 short. So close, yet impossibly far. I'd spent the morning on the phone with the Cleveland Clinic's financial coordinator, begging for payment plan options, extensions, anything. She was sympathetic but firm. Without full payment up front, they couldn't schedule the surgery. I was sitting in the hospital parking lot, my head in my hands, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Nolan? It's Casey. Casey Sullivan." I sat up straight, confused. "My future brother-in-law. We'd only met a handful of times. Polite conversations at family dinners, nothing substantial." "Casey. Hi, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice urgent. "In person. Today. Can you meet me?" An hour later, I sat across from Casey at a quiet coffee shop in downtown Cleveland. He looked different than he had at family gatherings, less polished, more human, tired, conflicted. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I want to help August," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. I stared at it, not understanding. "What is this?" "A check." For $20,000, the world stopped. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a check made out to August Bennett Medical Fund for exactly $20,000, signed by someone named Margaret Sullivan. "My mother," Casey explained. "She heard about August's situation through the GoFundMe campaign that's been circulating. She was horrified that your parents weren't helping." My throat tightened. "Casey, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," he interrupted, leaning forward. "There's more you need to know." His expression darkened. "Sienna doesn't know I'm here. Neither do your parents. And honestly, Nolan, if they find out, it's going to cause problems." "What kind of problems?" Casey exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "Your parents. They're not what they seem. This wedding, the money they're spending, it's not really about Sienna." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's about image. Status. My family comes from old money, Boston Brahmins, country club connections, that whole world. Your father has been trying to break into those circles for years. This wedding? It's his ticket in." I felt sick. "So Sienna's wedding is, what, a business transaction?" "Not entirely," Casey said carefully. "Your parents love Sienna, but they're also leveraging this marriage to elevate their social standing. My family has connections your father wants. Business opportunities, investment circles, country club memberships. This wedding isn't just a celebration. It's a strategic move." I sat back, stunned. "And August?" Casey's jaw tightened. "Helping August publicly would make them look bad. Like they couldn't afford both. Like they'd failed. Your father is obsessed with maintaining the appearance of success, of control. Admitting they chose the wedding over their grandson would shatter that image." Everything clicked into place. Gregory's cryptic words. "This family has an image to maintain. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about money. It was about pride." "My mother was disgusted when she learned the truth," Casey continued. "She's the one who insisted we help. But Nolan, you need to understand. If your parents find out we donated, they're going to see it as betrayal, as us undermining them publicly." "I don't care what they think," I said, my voice hard. Casey nodded. "I figured you'd say that. But Sienna, she's caught in the middle. She doesn't know about this yet, and when she finds out, she'll be furious. I finished. Yeah. Casey looked down at his coffee. But my conscience wouldn't let me stand by and do nothing. August is a kid. He deserves better than this. I stared at the check in my hands. $20,000 from people who barely knew us, while my own parents spent hundreds of thousands on appearances. Thank you, I said, my voice breaking. You have no idea what this means. Just be prepared, Casey said quietly. Because when your parents find out, there's going to be hell to pay. I deposited the check that afternoon. Combined with what we'd already raised, we now had enough. $70,000. August could have his surgery. Pilar sobbed when I told her, deep, gasping sobs of relief and disbelief. We held each other in the hospital hallway, crying, laughing, overwhelmed. We immediately called the Cleveland Clinic. Surgery was scheduled for November 8th, 2 days after Sienna's wedding. August was going to be okay, but Casey was right. The fallout came swift and brutal. Somehow, I never learned exactly how, word got back to my parents about the Sullivan family's donation. Maybe someone saw the GoFundMe update. Maybe Casey told Sienna in confidence, and she couldn't keep it secret. Either way, the next day, my phone exploded with messages. Gregory, how dare you embarrass this family by accepting charity from Casey's parents? This is unacceptable. Delia, Nolan, please tell me this isn't true. You've humiliated us. Sienna, you've turned my wedding into a scandal. Thanks a lot, big brother. I read each message, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. They were angry about being embarrassed, not guilty, not ashamed, not regretful, just angry that their image had been tarnished. I typed one response and sent it to all three of them. August's surgery is scheduled. He's going to live. You're welcome for letting you know. Then I muted the conversation. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly that night. The morning after Casey's donation hit the GoFundMe page, everything changed. What had been a quiet family crisis suddenly became very, very public. It started with a local parenting Facebook group. Someone, again I never learned who, posted a screenshot of August's GoFundMe campaign along with a pointed caption, "This little boy needs life-saving surgery while his grandparents spend $430K on a wedding." What kind of family does this? Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Then a Cleveland area mommy blogger picked it up, writing a scathing opinion piece titled, "When Family Values Mean Nothing, The Case of August Bennett." By noon, local news outlets were calling. By evening, we were trending on Twitter. I first realized the scope when my phone started ringing nonstop. Journalists, bloggers, radio hosts, all wanting interviews, wanting our side of the story. Pilar and I made a decision early on. We wouldn't engage. This wasn't about revenge or public shaming. It was about August. Period. But the story had taken on a life of its own. The Cleveland Morning Show reached out to my parents for comment. Gregory declined, but someone leaked a statement they'd given to a family friend. This is a private family matter that's been grossly mischaracterized. We love our grandson deeply and are doing everything we can to support him during this difficult time. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Comment sections exploded. Everything you can? You're spending $500,000 on a wedding. These people are monsters. Absolute monsters. Cancel the wedding. Save the child. It's that simple. The wedding venue, the Grand Oak Ballroom, started receiving angry calls and messages demanding they cancel the event. They released a statement saying they respected all parties' privacy, but wouldn't be canceling contracted events. Sienna's Instagram, which had been filled with glowing wedding prep posts, was flooded with angry comments. "Your nephew is dying while you plan your princess party. Disgusting. How do you sleep at night? Blood is thicker than champagne, Sienna." She locked her account within 24 hours. The community response was divided but intense. Our church held a special prayer service for August. The pastor, Father Miguel, gently referenced the importance of priorities in his sermon without naming names, but everyone knew. Some longtime friends of my parents quietly distanced themselves. Others doubled down in support, insisting the online mob was twisting the narrative. But the court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. Gregory and Delia Price were guilty of choosing vanity over family. The worst moment came when a local news reporter ambushed my parents outside their country club. I only saw the video later, shared on social media with tens of thousands of views. Reporter: Mr. and Mrs. Price, people are asking why you're spending $430,000 on a wedding while your grandson needs life-saving surgery that costs a fraction of that. What do you say to them? Gregory, visibly angry: This is a private family matter, and I don't appreciate being harassed. Reporter: But your grandson's GoFundMe is public. The community has donated over $50,000 because his own family wouldn't help. Don't you think people deserve answers? Delia, tearful: We love August. This isn't... You don't understand the full situation. Reporter: Then help us understand. Why is the wedding more important than your grandson's health? Gregory, grabbing Delia's arm: We're done here. The video ended with them hurrying to their car, Gregory's face red with anger, Delia crying. The comments were merciless. That night, Sienna called me for the first time in weeks. Are you happy now? She screamed before I could even say hello. My wedding is ruined. Ruined! People are calling me a monster. My friends are getting harassed online. This was supposed to be the best day of my life, and you've destroyed it. I listened, saying nothing. Say something, Nolan, she demanded. August's surgery is in 7 days, I said quietly. That's all I care about. You're selfish, she spat. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're using your sick kid to ruin my moment. Something inside me snapped. My sick kid? I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. That's your nephew, Sienna. Your 7-year-old nephew who might have been paralyzed because Mom and Dad cared more about your moment than his life. And you're upset about bad comments on Instagram? Silence. You're just like them, I said. You really are. I hung up. The next morning, a local TV station ran a human interest segment titled Community Rallies to Save Young Boy. They interviewed some of the strangers who donated to August's fund. A retired teacher, a single mom, a college student who gave $20 despite being broke herself. Each person said the same thing. Family should come first, always. The segment ended with a shot of August's smiling face from the GoFundMe page and a voiceover. Sometimes it takes a village to do what family won't, Pilar cried watching it. Not sad tears, grateful ones, because the exposure, the scandal, the public shaming, none of it had been our doing. We'd simply told the truth, and the world had responded. November 6th arrived with unseasonably warm weather and clear blue skies, perfect weather for a wedding. Pilar and I spent the morning at Lakeview Medical with August, going over pre-surgical instructions with Dr. Patel. His surgery was scheduled for 7 a.m. on November 8th, less than 48 hours away. How are you feeling, buddy? I asked August as we prepared to leave the hospital. Nervous, he admitted, his small hand gripping mine. But ready. You're the bravest kid I know, Pilar said, kissing his forehead. We'd made arrangements for Pilar's sister to stay with August that evening. Neither of us had any intention of attending Sienna's wedding. But then, at 2 p.m., my phone rang. It was Casey. Nolan, I need a favor, he said, his voice tight with tension. I need you to come to the wedding. Casey, I can't. Please, he interrupted. I know how you feel. God knows I understand. But something's happening here, and I think you need to see it. I frowned. What do you mean? Your father. He's been acting strange all morning, agitated, angry, and your mother's been crying. Sienna's a wreck. Half the guest list canceled because of the backlash. This whole thing is falling apart, and honestly, I think your family needs to face what they've done. That's not my problem, I said coldly. I know, Casey said quietly. But Nolan, if you don't show up, they'll spin this narrative forever. They'll say you were the vindictive son who destroyed the family. You'll never get closure. Trust me. Come. Bring Pilar. Don't stay long. Just be there. I looked at Pilar, who'd been listening. She nodded slowly. We'll think about it, I said. At 5:30 p.m., Pilar and I stood outside the Grand Oak Ballroom, watching luxury cars pull into the circular driveway. The venue was breathtaking, exactly as advertised. Twinkling lights draped across the entrance, towering floral arrangements framing the doors, a red carpet leading into the marble-floored lobby. $430,000 worth of perfection. We walked inside. The ceremony space was stunning. White chairs lined in perfect rows. A massive floral arch at the altar, dripping with roses and orchids. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light across the room. But something was off. The room was barely half full. Empty chairs dotted the aisles. Whispers rippled through the scattered guests as Pilar and I took seats in the back row. I spotted my parents near the front. Gregory stood stiffly in his tuxedo, his jaw clenched. Delia dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, her face blotchy and red. Several guests turned to stare at us, some with curiosity, others with what looked like pity? The ceremony began. Sienna walked down the aisle on Gregory's arm, looking every bit the bride she'd dreamed of being. Stunning gown, perfect makeup, flowers in her hands. But her smile was forced. Her eyes were red. Casey waited at the altar, looking equally strained. The officiant began the traditional vows. Everything proceeded mechanically, joylessly. Then, during the speak now or forever hold your peace moment, someone in the crowd coughed loudly. It wasn't intentional, just an unfortunate cough, but the timing made several people laugh nervously. Sienna's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. The ceremony continued, but the damage was done. What should have been a magical moment felt hollow. The reception was worse. We stayed in the back, observing from a distance as guests picked at $285 per plate meals and sipped expensive champagne. The room was beautiful. Candlelit tables, towering centerpieces, a jazz band playing softly in the corner. Everything picture perfect. But the atmosphere was funereal. Conversations were muted. People kept glancing at their phones. Some guests left early without saying goodbye. Then came the father-daughter dance. Gregory led Sienna onto the floor as the band played a slow, elegant song. They swayed together, and for a moment, it almost looked normal. Until Gregory's phone rang. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. He whispered something to Sienna and hurried out of the ballroom. Sienna stood alone on the dance floor, mortified, as guests watched in uncomfortable silence. Delia found me moments later, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. "Nolan, please, we need to talk." "There's nothing to say, Mom." "Yes, there is," she insisted, her voice breaking. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I followed her to a quiet corner. Delia's makeup was streaked with tears. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I know you hate us right now," she began. "I know what we did was unforgivable. But Nolan, you have to understand. Your father, he's been under so much pressure. His business partners, his reputation, the expectations." "Stop," I said flatly. "I don't want to hear excuses." "It's not an excuse," she said desperately. "It's the truth. Your father, he lost everything once, years ago, before you were born. His first business failed, and we were bankrupt. We had nothing, and he swore he'd never let that happen again, that our family would never be seen as failures." I stared at her. So this was about pride. "It was about survival," Delia whispered. In his mind, canceling this wedding, admitting we couldn't afford it all, It would have been admitting weakness, and he couldn't do it. Even for August. She broke down completely. I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. At that moment, Gregory returned, his face ashen. He walked straight to the microphone on stage, cutting off the band mid-song. The room fell silent. I need to say something, Gregory announced, his voice shaking. Sienna looked horrified. Dad, what are you— I made a mistake, Gregory said, his voice cracking. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. My grandson needed me, and I chose pride over family. I chose appearances over his life, and I was wrong. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I spent months planning this wedding, spending money I didn't even have, because I was terrified of being seen as less than successful. And in the process, I became the worst kind of failure, a grandfather who abandoned his family when it mattered most. Delia covered her face with her hands. Sienna stood frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks. August's surgery is in 2 days, Gregory continued, and I won't be there, because I don't deserve to be. But I need everyone here to know. My son, Nolan, is twice the man I am. And his son, August, deserves better than me. He stepped down from the stage and walked out of the ballroom. The room erupted in whispers. Pilar and I left shortly after. As we drove home in silence, my phone buzzed. A text from Casey. He just donated $50,000 to August's medical fund. Took out a loan. I stared at the message. Numb. Too little. Too late. But something. The morning after the wedding, the fallout began in earnest. Pilar and I woke to dozens of missed calls and text messages. Social media was ablaze with videos and commentary from guests who'd witnessed Gregory's public confession. The story had gone from local scandal to regional news overnight. Grandfather confesses at daughter's wedding. I chose pride over my grandson's life, read one headline. Avish $430,000 wedding implodes after family medical crisis exposed, announced another. We turned off our phones. By noon, the consequences were spreading like wildfire through the Price family social circle. Gregory's business partners began distancing themselves. 2 longtime associates requested meetings to discuss concerns about judgment and priorities. One investor quietly pulled out of a pending deal. The country club, where my parents had been members for 15 years, received formal complaints from other members about the unconscionable behavior and poor reflection on the club's values. Delia's book club asked her to take a temporary leave of absence until things settled down. The social standing my father had spent decades building and $500,000 trying to cement crumbled in less than 24 hours. Sienna's situation was worse. Her Instagram, briefly reopened after the wedding, was flooded with thousands of comments, some supportive, most brutally critical. You got your fancy wedding while your nephew suffered. Hope it was worth it. How do you look at yourself in the mirror? This is what happens when people care more about appearances than family. She locked her account again within hours and deactivated her Facebook entirely. Casey called me that afternoon, his voice exhausted. Sienna's not doing well, he admitted. She's barely eating. Won't leave the bedroom. She keeps saying her life is ruined. I said nothing. Nolan, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Casey, I interrupted quietly. I'm done. There's a difference. A long pause. Fair enough, he said finally. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. You have nothing to apologize for. You helped when no one else would. I won't forget that. After we hung up, Pilar asked, Do you feel bad for them? I thought about it honestly. No, I said. I feel bad for August, who almost lost his future because his grandparents cared more about appearances. I feel bad for you, who had to watch our son suffer while they planned champagne tastings. I feel bad for us, who begged for help and got excuses. I paused. But them? No. They made their choices. Now they live with the consequences. That evening, Gregory tried calling me 3 times. I didn't answer. Then Delia sent a long text message. "Nolan, please. Your father is devastated. He made a terrible mistake, but he's trying to make it right. The loan he took out for August's fund, it's real. He wants to help. He wants to be there for the surgery. Please don't shut us out completely. We're family." I read it twice, then showed it to Pilar. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I thought about August, sleeping peacefully in his hospital bed, blissfully unaware of the family drama swirling around him. I thought about the strangers who donated to his GoFundMe, people who owed us nothing but gave anyway. I thought about Casey's parents, who'd stepped up when my own wouldn't. And I thought about my parents, who'd had every opportunity to choose differently and didn't. "I want to focus on August," I said finally. "Everything else is noise." I deleted the text without responding. The next day, a local journalist reached out requesting an interview. She wanted to feature August's story as part of a series on medical crowdfunding and family dynamics. "It could help other families in similar situations," she said. "Shine a light on the gaps in our healthcare system and the difficult choices people have to make." Pilar and I discussed it. "If it helps even one family avoid what we went through," Pilar said, "it's worth it." We agreed to the interview, after August's surgery, because in 24 hours, nothing else would matter except whether our son came through okay. That night, lying in bed beside Pilar, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not because the family conflict was resolved. It wasn't. Not because my parents had made amends. They hadn't. But because for the first time, I realized I didn't need their approval, their money,